My guest this week is Jorge Moreira da Silva, Undersecretary General and Executive Director of the United Nations Office for Project Services. Welcome, Jorge.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you here in New York. You know, usually you're based in Europe and
Copenhagen. Yeah.
Right, but I don't think you spend much time there either.
No, I've been mainly on the ground and also coming to New York almost every month. So Copenhagen is home now, but not really the place where I stay most of the time.
Yeah, well, I've seen you most recently in Gaza, and you've been to Ukraine, and you go to Africa. So we're going to talk about all that. But I'd first like to ask you about this job, leading Office for Project Services. What are you actually responsible for? And when you talk, what kind of projects are we talking about?
Yeah, I've been working on policy and also on politics all my life, and also on development. But this is the first time where I'm leading an organization that is hands-on, getting things done, doing infrastructure, building roads, hospitals, schools, energy systems, procuring, purchasing and procuring on behalf of our partners, and also doing project management. In practical terms, what does it mean? It means that we have a partner country or a UN sister agency or an MDB like the World Bank that needs a project to be implemented, and they hire us to do so, and we operate in a way that is pretty frugal and agile. It's what we call fee for service. It's the closest to the private sector, but we are not private sector, we are UN. But the way we work is very agile, flexible. We do the job and then we move on. If we continue with new projects, we stay in that country. If there are no other projects, we go to another place. And this is UNOPS. So it's an organization that has almost 6,000 personnel working in 130 countries with a delivery of $3 billion per year. With a high concentration, as you know, Melissa, in highly fragile conflict and violent contexts. We are the largest UN agency in Myanmar, one of the largest in Afghanistan, in Mozambique, in Gaza, and in all the difficult places.
Probably something that no private sector company could do.
Exactly. We take the risk, which means that then we go to the private sector, and we, of course, hire most of the times locally, companies, people. So it's really a project management exercise. So the idea of de-risking implementation, it's probably the DNA of the organization.
Why is infrastructure so important, especially for the United Nations?
We have some statistics from our research, for instance, with the Oxford University, that it's pretty compelling. 92% of the Sustainable Development Goals, 92% depends on infrastructure. 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions are related with infrastructure. So if we don't get it right, we won't succeed on the SDGs and on climate action. So infrastructure is really a game changer for humanitarian development and peace, for sustainable development, and for climate action. And if we go to a country like Yemen, would the private sector be ready to go to Yemen or to Mali or to Somalia or to Sudan, or to Gaza, or to Myanmar? No. So unless the UN is ready to be there and to partner with the country, with the population, with the partners, and put in place the infrastructure, you wouldn't have the private sector going to those places. And the tragic thing, as you know very well from your experience, because you have been, if there is someone that has been on the ground, it's you know from your many years at UN, in some of these countries, they are disproportionately affected by all types of crises. When I go to Myanmar, they got hit by the massive earthquake in Mandalay. A few months before, they got a very strong cyclone. They have been on war and conflict for several years. So it's the kind of country where everything happens. You go to Mozambique, it's the same. Now affected by floods, the Idai cyclone some years ago. So you have some countries that are disproportionately affected by all types of crises, and those countries are very often the lowest on the hierarchy of funding. And that's why we are very committed in supporting everyone in the world, but particularly those that face somehow a market failure, that the private sector wouldn't go there unless there is someone de-risking the investment and de-risking the implementation.
Could you give a contrasting example of a project that you have implemented that meets all of those criteria and that you're particularly proud of?
That's the difficult question, because out of the 1,000 projects a year, we are very proud about those projects. But let me pick one example related with climate, because you were asking me. Well, one on adaptation is the early warning systems in Timor-Leste to prevent the crisis, to ensure that Timor-Leste is well equipped to anticipate when a storm is coming. Another example is mangrove protection in Kiribati, very much affected by climate impacts. But the other example on mitigation is in Sierra Leone, where we have constructed mini-grids and microgrids powered by solar energy to get access to hospitals and schools in remote areas. Because in some areas in Africa, as you know, big transmission lines, cross-continental transmission lines, are very expensive and not possible to implement. So if you are dealing with remote areas in Africa, you can do it with the new technologies, which is mini-grids, so small grids, mini-grids, microgrids with batteries, with solar energy. And this has been an excellent solution, namely in Sierra Leone, but also in many other countries in Africa. So this is the kind of things that show that infrastructure is not like bricks or steel. It's about providing social, basic human needs. And I could speak about Myanmar. I saw it in Myanmar, how we run the health centers in Myanmar, or in Afghanistan, where one of the most beautiful projects that we are running in one of the most difficult countries in the world. And in Afghanistan, we have found a way to support the people without supporting the regime. We have found a way to provide livelihoods to 15 million people in Afghanistan. How?
15 million?
15. Yes, 15 million people of benefit from a project called Community Resilience and Livelihoods. What is this project? We are rehabilitating roads, streets, water canals, paying men and women to do the job. So it's a cash for work project where we hire men and women to do this kind of light maintenance and infrastructure work. And they get the job. And I spoke with the women and with the men there. When I went to Kabul, but also to Herat, and to all these villages where we are doing the job, many, many women told me, if it wouldn't be this project, the fact that you are paying us to do this job, we wouldn't have any conditions to give bread and food to the table, because we have lost our husband. Or unfortunately, some of them got addicted to drugs or are injured. And in many, many houses in Afghanistan, the only source of income are women. That's why it's so important.
And yet, or they're also not allowed to work.
Exactly. And yet, but you can see that even in one of the most difficult places to work and to ensure that the women can work at UN and can benefit of the project, we still have found a way. It's based on the communities. My team at UNOPS, they go to the small villages, to the communities, and they spend hours with the communities, and it's the communities deciding what's the road, the street that should be rehabilitated, the road that connects the market with the village and with the school, or the water canal to be cleaned. So you can see how beautiful is this project, and in one of the most difficult places to operate. So when I hear some people saying that, oh, we can't work in this country because it's a de facto authority, we can't work in this country because of the regime, I said, yeah, it depends on the way we work.
Well, it is their concern is diversion. That's the biggest concern of donors in countries where they don't approve of the regime.
But that's why we can't be silent. When I met the Taliban, and I met the Taliban, I said bluntly in Kabul, you will never get the international community coming back to this country with the support you need, and unless you bring girls back to the schools and you accept women to have the access to all the professions they want and they deserved. So you can still be blunt and honor the principles of the UN and at the same time deliver on the ground. So what I'm telling the donors is, let's not use as an excuse the fact that it's difficult to operate in a country, not to operate in the country. It depends on the way we work. And if, for instance, women are restricted, and we have done that when our colleagues couldn't go to the work, we stop the project. And this is the kind of principled approach that I think that we need to take, but always trying to find a solution, because we can't punish the people. So we have to find a way. We always need to find a way to support the people directly.
I believe you recently visited Gaza.
Yes.
What did you see?
It's my third time in Gaza since October the 7th. So in the last 27 months, I went to Gaza 3 times. This time, I could see more food in the markets, in the streets. But that's the only good news. I was completely shocked, Melissa, by the devastation. Again, I visited Gaza 6 months ago. I visited at the beginning of the war. I've seen devastation, but the kind of devastation that I could witness 2 weeks ago is much higher than 6 months ago. Basically, Gaza now is rubble and tents. And it's not like going to a refugee camp. You know refugee camps. You have been working there. In refugee camps, in the good refugee camps, you have proper sheltering, you have tents that can stand. That's not Gaza. What I saw in Gaza is not really tents. I saw some tents, but most of the kind of things where people stay overnight are not really tents, are the kind of tissue or clothes with sticks and with stones to help that standing. I went to Gaza in the same week of the big storms and heavy rains. Children dying, freezing. I saw children walking with no shoes. 300,000 kids with no access to schools. They are floating around in Gaza. They have no place to go because the tents are not safe. So we are basically on the streets. And this is heartbreaking. The people that I saw in Gaza, with whom I engaged in Gaza, they are not waiting for reconstruction only. The reconstruction is key. But reconstruction requires planning, requires $52 billion, requires proper governance. My point is, we can't wait to the reconstruction to bring what the people need immediately. And it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy. Rubble removal. We must remove the rubble, 60 million tons of rubble. It's equivalent to 30 tons per person in Gaza. Demining. Removal of unexploded ordnance. In that rubble, you have mines, you have unexploded ordnance, you have asbestos, you have human remains. So the kind of operation can't be amateur. It's crucial to immediately bring whatever is needed to remove the mines, the unexploded ordnance, to do waste management. Then you need fuel. UNOPS, as you know, is the agency that is bringing the fuel every day to Gaza and distributing the fuel inside Gaza. It's what helps bakeries, hospitals, the desalinization, the sewage partially functioning. We need stable provision of fuel. And I've been exchanging with donors that we can't be in a situation where we don't know next month so we will get the fuel or next week. So this is key. The other thing that will be crucial, and again, not rocket science, is repairing the power plant. The power plant in Gaza was responsible before the war for 50% of the electricity. The rest was the transmission lines. With our engineers, we went to the power plant and we saw that we can, in 3 months, repair 40 megawatts of the power plant, and in the remaining 6 months, repairing 100 megawatts, which means that in 10 months, we can have the full functioning of the power plant, but in the next 3 months, we could already have 1/3 of the power plant functioning. And the kind of money that is needed, it's 10 million. So $10 million would help the people in Gaza having access to electricity. Then we need to do damage assessment of the buildings, to mark the buildings that are almost collapsing. And as you know, in the last few weeks, most of the deaths in Gaza were on the collapsing of the buildings. I can continue listing, like repairing the networks, water, sewage, sanitation, electricity. This is the kind of things that don't require a reconstruction.
Hospitals.
We could sheltering, prefabs rather than tents. We should bring prefabs to Gaza. So the UN knows what is needed, and the UN can do it. Not
What's
only UNOPS.
preventing?
What is preventing is first the political will, and then the funding. The second thing is the dual use. My team and other teams can't do rubble removal if heavy machinery is forbidden. We can't repair the power plant in Gaza if the spare parts are forbidden. We can't bring solar systems with mini grids and with batteries if the solar panels and the batteries are forbidden. And this requires political will. So it's important that Israel agrees that early recovery is a basic human need to the people, and therefore restrictions must be lifted. And so this is the kind of practical things that we need to fix. It's not just the funding.
You sound a bit frustrated.
I'm very frustrated. I'm deeply frustrated.
How do you deal with that feeling of frustration?
Well, I try to channel the frustration to reformism and to find a solution. So I don't channel the frustration to nostalgia. I don't tend to get nostalgic. I try to channel my frustration, which is what keeps me awake at night since I start my public service. Channel this frustration about injustice to solutions, and I wouldn't say that I'm utopian, but I think that there is always a way. And if you find the right solutions and the right arguments, because when you engage with people with intelligent arguments, with compassion, but at the same time with rational arguments, you engage in a conversation that delivers always something. So I'm quite hopeful that we will find a way in the short term to bring more aid to Gaza. The reactions that I'm getting from member states, from this kind of practical ideas that I'm sharing with you, Melissa, gives me hope, because everyone gets surprised about how much could be done with so little money. So now it's up to the member states to engage among themselves. So when I speak with my colleagues ahead of the other agencies, we are all with that spirit, which is we are not here to do politics, but at the same time, we are the UN, and therefore we have to serve the people and address the bottlenecks. And when the things are wrong, we say that they are wrong. When we see impunity, we have to say that there is impunity. When we see that there is lack of political will, we have to say that there is lack of political will.
Or obstruction.
But look,
and you see
Melissa,
the lives. I mean, in a way, what you're describing is infrastructure that I wouldn't say necessarily saves lives, but in many ways it does. What it does do is it delivers human dignity.
Yes, and human dignity. The Sustainable Development Goals are not a technocratic construction with 17 goals and 169 targets and 232 indicators. It's all about the human dignity and the idea of interdependence. And I think this element of fairness, of human dignity, is the conversation that we need to bring. For me, one of the big challenges we face now on multilateralism at the UN is how can we bring these conversations to taxpayers and to voters, so that they understand that there are costs of inaction, that we don't invest on solidarity is negative not only for those we should support and help, but also for ourselves. This is the kind of conversation that we need to bring to the national level. And I have lots of hope on the youth. And I think that the Pact for the Future, the fact that the Secretary General brought the youth to the cockpit, literally to the cockpit, the fact that the UN is so much engaging with the youth, is giving me hope that some of the injustice that we are seeing in the world could be, if not overcome, at least mitigated with joint solutions. And the UN is still the best place to find this kind of joint solutions.
I think we're seeing a kind of, in a way, when everything is under threat and the world is in crisis, it is the time when people pull together who believe in global cooperation and believe in investing in making big investments in humanity and peace.
And I think it's also important, Melissa, again, in your podcast, you often bring colleagues that tell amazing stories, particularly those that come from the ground. But I think it's also important that member states know the kind of risks that UN colleagues face when they serve the people. 2025 was awful. It was the worst year for the UN in terms of the negative impacts on the people that work at UN. The number of humanitarians that lost their lives, the number of people that were detained. And this is the kind of things that I'm witnessing. And I'm going to tell you one story that is inspirational from one of these cases. In Gaza, as you know, March last year, we got a strike that in the UNOPS guest house that killed a colleague, Marine, and injured 6 other colleagues. The year before, we got our colleague, Lael, that also lost his life with 20 other members of his family, except the daughter of 9 years that survived. What I couldn't believe was when I went to Gaza 2 weeks ago, I saw one of the colleagues that were severely injured in March. He was again in Gaza. Joël Fournet was severely injured in Gaza. He's 62, almost retiring, working at UN for many years. He was severely injured when Marine was killed. And the first thing that he did after healing was going back to Gaza. This is not on the news. The first time that I'm telling this, but this is the kind of unique profiles that you get at UN. He could be in a very safe place. He could have been, of course, there are many other places. He's a security advisor. He could work in many other places. But the first thing that he wanted was to go back to Gaza. So this is the kind of things that shows how unique is the UN. And I really hope that the member states understand that funding the UN is not funding fat or luxury. Is getting these colleagues of mine and many other colleagues to be at the service of those who need it most. Without UN, people wouldn't have access to basic things in those difficult places.
I really get from you that you are seeing the images of these people, not only our colleagues who are serving on the front lines, often at great danger to themselves, but also the images of the people they're helping. And I recall that you recently also visited Ukraine.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering what you saw there and what struck you from that visit.
Again, in Ukraine, the devastation is awful. One example, the schools. When I went to Odessa and then Mykolaiv, I saw the schools totally destroyed. And the headmaster, she told me that my kids, the students, they have not had access to education coming to the school during COVID and now during war. So we have kids in Ukraine that for 6 years they have been having access to education remotely, but not going to the school. So
How does that make you feel when you see that a school is a target?
It's completely shocking, and it's against all international humanitarian law. So, which is another thing that we are witnessing. This time is different because this time we see in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan, we see that even the civilians are a target, and even if civilian infrastructure is a target. And even, as the Secretary General often says, even the war have rules. And this time we are witnessing wars and conflicts that are not fulfilling the basic rules, namely, don't target civilians, don't target civilian infrastructure, don't block access of aid.
What is keeping you awake at night?
Okay, what keeps me awake at night is injustice. All kinds of injustices, the climate injustice of the impact that we are creating today, but also for our children and grandchildren, the injustice of within countries and between countries, the injustice of those that live under conflict, the injustice of the kids that don't take the social elevator, and if they are born poor, they remain poor themselves, their grandchildren, then grandchildren for generations. This is what keeps me awake at night, which means that it doesn't matter if it is the UN or at the national level or local level. It's always the same topic. I change jobs often. I've been on national politics, on international level, academia, but the topic is always the same, is sustainable development and climate action. So what keeps me awake at night is, in one hand, how to address injustice, not just social ones, but especially what keeps me awake at night is how to overcome that. I'm still highly motivated and excited about the can-do job. So I'm in the perfect organization. UNOPS, we tend to say that we are the can-do. We have the can-do attitude, and I think that that's the UN. It's not UNOPS. It's the UN, which is an amazing organization.
George, you kind of mentioned this throughout our conversation, that you have had roles as a politician. You were even an academic in your home country of Portugal. I'm curious, actually, what led you from these roles to the United Nations?
As I mentioned, I've been always on the topic of sustainable development, climate action. I started my public service. Well, I wouldn't say public service, but at least my civic activities at the school, mobilizing colleagues against pollution from a company, steel production near our school. So I started my civic activities trying to fix a problem at the time on environment. Then I engaged at the national politics. I became the leader of the youth organization of my party at the national level. I've been Secretary of State, Minister.
Weren't you in politics the same time as Antonio Guterres was Prime Minister?
I was in a totally different party. And by the way, I was leading the opposition at the time against the Antonio Guterres Prime Minister. So I was organizing demonstrations of students against, at the time, the Prime Minister Antonio Guterres. So he was Prime Minister, and I was the leader of the youth organization of my party that was very different, another party. And well, which is interesting from a
I
historical
guess he's
point.
Forgiven you because he hired you.
I guess so, but also shows how that life really goes fast. It looks like yesterday, and it was 30 years ago. But so I, as I said, I was a member of the European Parliament, member of National Parliament, Secretary of State, Minister in 4 different cabinets. I went to the OECD, leading the DAC Secretariat and Development Cooperation, and then I ran to the UN, to UNOPS, for 2 reasons. One was helping on implementation, because I was at OECD designing policies, standards, norms, and I wanted to be on the other side, which was really doing the job on the ground, getting the job done, not designing policies, just getting the job done. The second reason was helping rescuing the US organization. UNOPS faced a massive crisis 4 years ago, one of the most known crises in the UN system. And I had, in my time at the government as minister, I was part also of a rescue operation when we had the bailout of Portugal. Mm-hmm. But I really like to engage in operations of helping rescue an organization, reforming an organization. So that attracts me a lot from a managerial point of view. And indeed, I think in the last 3 years I've been on the job. Indeed, we succeeded in rescuing and in concluding the reforms. Mm-hmm. We have now more contracts with partners than before. I didn't fix the organization. I helped fixing the organization with my team. And it's very rewarding when you look back and you see that now we are in a different, we turn the page. So the sensation that, the feeling that, okay, we turn the page, it's one of the reasons why I came to the UN.
Did your family encourage you to go into this kind of public service line of work? We are a very
politicized family. I mean, my wife, my kids, we talk a lot about politics. By the way, nobody is aligned with my previous political ideology, so which shows how diverse is my home. But indeed, I don't have politicians in family. My father was involved once we had the revolution. After the revolution, he was involved also on at local level on politics. But I don't have any I would say impetus from a family point of view. But everyone always encouraged me very much to do the service and to be on the public service. I'm very fortunate because my family, they have been living well with the fact that I'm not with them. So this is quite
How
difficult.
How old are your kids?
I have my son João is 27, my daughter Maria is 22, and my daughter Madalena is 17. My wife Mariana is in Lisbon. I'm not in Lisbon. The family is split, but I think that when they see the result of what we are doing at UN, we all are doing at UN, I think that they are all happy with the fact that there is one of the members of the family that is contributing, but
well, they're contributing too by supporting you doing this work.
So that's the point. I wouldn't be able. I know how difficult it is. I know other colleagues that have more difficulties than I have because fortunately I've had always this support from the family to operate in this way that is not very common, which is I live basically in a plane or in Copenhagen, where they are in another part of the world, but we have some routines, namely which makes my life a bit more difficult, which is I go almost every weekend to see the family. It's my cost and it's my pleasure, but you can see that as always happens with the families, we always find a way to when there is love, we always find a way to remain connected.
And when you are not with your family, I mean, you have to decompress at some point, and I'm just wondering, what do you do to relax?
I'm going to tell you something that will surprise you. I fly. I'm almost finishing. Well, I run, I play tennis, I do those kinds of things that are normal, but then I do something that has been my dream since I was a kid, and I decided to take flight lessons. So I'm finishing. I just miss 3 hours I fly ultralight, and I already fly alone. So I was relieved as a solo flighter some months ago. So I took these flight lessons over weekend and online, the theory, for 1 year. and it's where I decompress and you can't imagine the number of metaphors that I've been developing based on flights, and I bring it to the UN-80 reform. So the idea that we need a new layout of the plane to get better lift, to have more reach, to climb to higher altitude, and you can't do it unless you have a new layout of the plane. So that's the kind of thing that unfortunately my colleagues are getting too often, which is now that I fly, which is an amazing sensation. When you fly a plane alone, it's something unbelievable. Now I tend to bring these metaphors to change management, but I hope that they forgive me.
I'm sure that they'll forgive you. That's a good metaphor, and it's probably a place where no one can reach you on the phone, and you're not listening to news and
I clear
scrolling.
my mind. I literally clear my mind when I'm up there
And thinking about how you can change the world or the UN.
I still have that utopian. I'm a bit utopian.
Utopian, and if you could create your utopian vision of the world, what would you see?
Okay, I see a world where the 17 SDGs have been addressed, starting with peace. I think that peace, there is nothing more important than peace. Peace and no poverty, and 1.5 degrees. So that's I wouldn't say my utopian, but my sustained dream is a world with no war, no poverty, and on track to 1.5 degrees.
And 1.5 degrees looks like?
And 1.5 degrees looks like a balanced world where nature and human beings relate to each other in a balanced manner, and we don't look to nature as our property, through the respect to nature, respect to the next generations.
Does that link to the story I read about that you once released an Iberian lynx into the wild, which was an endangered species?
Yes, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of is the Iberian lynx was extinct. So it was declared under extinction. And with the EU project funded by the European Union, Portugal and Spain started a process of recovering the Iberian lynx. And it took maybe 15 years to recover with the lynx being incubated in a facility, and then finally there was a day where we have to feel sufficiently comfortable to release the first lynx, and then to have the normal reproductive path in the environment, and it worked. Can you imagine? Even a species can be recovered. So if there is as you used to say, if there is the will, there is the way. You see why I remain optimist, because if you can recover the lynx, maybe you can get 1.5 degrees and even get peace in Gaza and in Afghanistan, whatever. But
I think that is a wonderful metaphor for the way you mobilize to recover the most devastated parts of the world, and how when we all come together, we can create beauty and hope. So thank you so much, Jorge.
Thank you, Melissa.
And wishing you all the best in this work.
Thank you.
And all the best for everything that you do in building the infrastructure that is so needed in the most fragile places on Earth.
Thank you.